Shalom. This week we are reading Parashat Vayera in the book of Genesis, beginning in Sefer Bereshit, chapter 18. And in this Torah portion, the portion of Vayera, we come to what's considered to be perhaps the most important event in the career of Avraham Avinu, Abraham, our father. Beginning in chapter 22, we read of what's considered by most to be the 10th and final test in Avraham's life, and that, of course, I'm referring to the binding of Isaac, Akedat Yitzchak, that most difficult event in his life. You know, there's a concept which is reflected in the Mishnah in Chapters of the Fathers, Pirkei Avot, in the 5th chapter, that our forefather Abraham was tested with 10 different tests, and the purpose of these tests was to show how beloved he was by the Almighty. And in fact, we find that the Torah alludes to these tests, and we have, for example, the famine in the land, we have the taking of Sarah, Abraham's wife, to the house of Pharaoh, and of course, as we mentioned, the most singular, most difficult, the last of these tests is the binding of Isaac, God's command to take his son, his only son, Yitzchak, his son that was given to him at such an advanced age, and to offer him up as an offering. And we find that the Torah describes this incident in great detail. And this in itself is somewhat unusual because, after all, a major principle in our understanding of the Torah and Torah study is that Torah is not a book of stories. And even if these stories are important to us, it's not a collection of the stories of our fathers, it's a guide for our lives. So there must be something particularly important and singular that the Torah comes to teach us with the tremendous detail of all of the tests that were part of Abraham's life, and particularly this last one, the final great Nisayon test trial of Avraham, the binding of Isaac. And actually, I'm thinking of another question which is posed by the great Maharal, one of the greatest thinkers in Jewish history. And he actually states, why is it that we only find this concept of the 10 trials was visited upon Avraham and not upon the other forefathers? And the truth is that there is a tradition, and the tradition is that these 10 tests which happened to Avraham, they're actually a reflection of the fact that every single one of us has to really go through 10 different major tests in our lives according to exactly who we are, that each of us experiences a flavor of this concept of being tested by God on 10 different occasions. And because Avraham is the father of the nation and kind of like a massive collective soul, and of course we have this concept that whatever happened to the forefathers happens to the children, so we can kind of deduce this from the life of Avraham. And there's also another concept that we should reflect upon, which is that the great Avraham was not really considered to be such a great man and so righteous because of the fact that he really kept the entire Torah even before it was given, even though he did that, but rather the unique stature and status that is awarded to Avraham, and the information that we're told that in the eyes of the Holy One, blessed be he was so beloved, is really because of the fact that he withstood these trials, that he stood up to these tests, and that is really what shows how beloved he was. It's only the fact that he had these tests that really communicates that. And so it is really with every individual. Part of our life's goal, the reason that we're here, is to be able to surmount these obstacles, the tests that are given to each one of us, and not so much that we should fulfill the letter of the law, not so much that we should contain all of the well springs of information that's possible to obtain, but that we should be able to navigate throughout everyday life and deal with each situation that God gives us. In other words, to put it really simply, all of life is a test, and it's only by withstanding the tests that befall us that we're able to prove our mettle, just as Avraham was able to show really what he was made of, how beloved he is in the eyes of the Creator, because of the fact that he was able to withstand and shine forth the power of his presence and personality and striving for perfection through those circumstances, and therefore fulfill his purpose in the world. And so really this is one of the things that the tests, particularly the last test of Avraham Avinu, shows us, is that life is all about being tested. And it's to be expected. In fact, if we don't have this kind of challenge, if we don't feel that we're really being pushed to the limit, we should perhaps think that maybe something is wrong. One of our greatest sages said that if a person feels that his life is placid and that he doesn't have any major upheavals for a period of 30 days, if 30 days go by, a month, without any sort of test, he has to start wondering to himself, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't God examining me? Why isn't he giving me such an opportunity? Each test that we get also is in accordance with our personality, our station in life, each of us according to our particular potential. So, as we know, the major characteristic, the trait, the attribute of Abraham, our father, was chesed, kindness. He's identified with the desire to do kindness, and everything about him was a question of love. And so too, really the major theme of the tests of Abraham was to accept them with love. And that's really what he did. He accepted them with tremendous love. And of course, the final trial of Abraham, the binding of Isaac, was such a tremendous confusion for him and such a contradiction. Here, God promised him that he will have offspring, that he will have descendants, that they'll continue through Isaac, the child that he received at such an advanced age, and that the next thing that he hears is that God is telling him to slaughter this very son. This coming, of course, after a career in which he traveled throughout the world and preached to people that this is exactly the type of service, this pagan kind of bloodthirsty cult of human sacrifice, this is exactly the kind of thing that God, that the real God, the Creator, the true one God, detests and abhors, and that one shouldn't do this. And now he finds himself in a situation where he has to go and do that very thing. So this was indeed a tremendous test for him, which he really accepted in love. And again, one of the key concepts here, the idea that each one of us can look forward to this very idea, that we're going to be tested throughout life, and that our challenge in fulfilling our purpose is not to become the greatest scholar, is not to be able to fulfill every idea, but to be able to withstand these tests. That's what makes us beloved in the eyes of God. So, there is an idea that the Holy Baal Shem Tov expresses, and he actually connects this to the verse in Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 4, that says that Hashem, your God is coming to test you. He says, he puts it very, very simply, and he's very straightforward. He says, this world is a world of tests. That's the whole purpose of this world. And actually, the entire goal of having our soul come into this world is in order to withstand these tests. And that each one that we each receive is according to the particular time of our lives. A young person has one type of tests, a middle-aged person, an older person has another type of test, and it's all changing according to who we are. And that the greatest challenge is to accept these trials, these nisyonots, these trials with love, and to understand that this is really the goal of showing that we understand that everything is for our own benefit. And actually, it's an interesting connection that's made. Our sages deliberate the idea of Job, the great righteous Job, upon whom many terrible trials were delivered, and he really stood up to those trials. But it's interesting that in the daily prayers we identify with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we say, blessed are you, God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And some of our sages actually ask, why is it that we don't relate to the God of Job? Because he really was such a great man, and we learn so much about the potential to withstand suffering from him. And the answer that they provide is the fact that Job did not accept his trials with love. He actually rejected them. He actually contested the righteousness of God's behavior with him, and so he was not exactly on the same page at all with Abraham. And actually we find that all of the blessings that our forefather Abraham received from God, and indeed we find that he didn't he didn't really ascend to his level of righteousness until after he withstood this last test. He withstood all of the tests, and especially the last one, and the Holy One, blessed be He, gave him all of these blessings because he proved that he's indeed beloved of God. He has this relationship. He really gave over to his children for all time and to all mankind the idea of being able to perceive and see what the purpose of life is. It's to be able to find the presence of God under all circumstances and in every situation, and to realize that part of our lives and the greatness that we can strive for and achieve, and the negative aspects of our personality that we're able to subdue, it's all due to the ability to withstand the tests, the everyday tests, great and small, according to who we are at each particular time of our lives, to withstand those tests and show that we really do have this close and intimate relationship with God.